Nestled in the heart of Newport, Rhode Island, the Elms stands as a monument to the opulence and ambition of America's Gilded Age. The home was built to be the summer residence for coal magnate Mr. Edward Julius Berwind and his wife Herminie. Construction began in 1899 and was completed in 1901 at the cost of $1.4 million, the equivalent of $49.7 million today. The home was designed by Philadelphia architect Horace Trumbauer, and he drew direct inspiration from the mid-18th century French Château at Newport. Its Beaux-Arts style captures the essence of European aristocracy while showcasing the technological advancements of the early 20th century. The opulent mansion is over 31,000 square feet, making it the 19th largest historic house in the US and 3rd largest cottage in Newport, Rhode Island. The interior of the estate was designed by Jules Allard, who also worked on the interiors of other iconic Newport estates like Marble House and The Breakers. As you step inside, you are transported to a world of grandeur. The entrance hall sets the tone with its marble columns, intricate moldings, and glittering chandeliers. Every detail was carefully curated to impress, reflecting the Berwinds' status among America's elite. To the left of the Grand Hall is the library, a dark and masculine room that was created for Edward. Next to the library is the drawing room, which was designed around the elaborate 18th century painting on the ceiling which depicts dawn chasing away the darkness of night. This is now one out of several 18th century paintings that remain in the house today. Double doors to the left lead to the conservatory, which was inspired by 18th century greenhouses in France. The Berwinds chose to fill this room with palms and other varieties of exotic plants. And one of the many things that make this house special is the harmony between house and garden. Every main room of the house faced the gardens and terraces, which would also serve as open-air dining rooms furnished with carpets, rare plants, and colored lamps. The conservatory features 4 marble statues that represent the seasons of the year, although the star of the room is the Rogue Royal fountain that stands in front of trellised mirrors that reflect the exterior gardens into the room. Towards the back of the conservatory, you'll walk through another set of double doors that will lead you back into the drawing room before you enter one of the most magical rooms of the house. That, of course, is the ballroom. In August of 1901, this grand ballroom was filled with rose trees, palms, orchids, and lotus flowers during the Elms' first housewarming party. And just outside the back doors, trained monkeys waited to entertain guests. As you walk through the back of the ballroom, you'll enter the dining room, which the Berwinds used to host extravagant dinner parties attended by the era's most prominent figures. On the walls, the dining room displays a series of 18th century Venetian paintings, although in 1962, the over-door paintings were sold off at auction, along with the grand dining room table. Although thankfully, throughout the years, the Preservation Society of Newport has worked diligently to reunite the original furnishings with the home. In 2004, 4 of the paintings were reinstalled, and in 2007, the dining room table was returned. Then, in 2012, the remaining 2 missing paintings were purchased and reinstalled, finally completing the dining room for the first time in 50 years. Again, we walk through another set of doors that lead to the breakfast room, and this room was designed around 3 18th century Kangxi lacquer panels. At the time of filming, I heard nothing, but then when I was editing, listen to the sound I hear. Spooky. Although today, this room is one of the few surviving lacquer rooms in the world. Thankfully, the Preservation Society has carefully restored this room to be enjoyed for future generations. Walking through a set of doors, we leave the breakfast room and enter the main kitchen, and fun fact, this room was used for filming the HBO series Gilded Age. What's amazing is if you look up in the main kitchen, you will see this upstairs area that was used to hold all of the fine china for the family, and if you look directly down in the middle, you'll see the kitchen right there. The first floor of the Elms was the center of public life and entertaining, but the family's private quarters were tucked away upstairs, offering a more intimate glimpse into the lives of the Berwinds. When walking up the grand staircase, you can't help but imagine going back in time and how the Berwinds themselves and only their most special guest walked up these same steps to the second floor. And as you look over the railing here, you'll see you have a partial view of the grand hall. Directly above us is another astonishing mural, which I'll insert a full photo of, but really, this estate spared no expense when it came to detail. Everything was thought of. At the top of the staircase straight ahead was the family sitting room, which acted as the heart of the second floor. And down the hallways on both the left and the right side are the family's bedrooms. Now, fun fact, the marble table in the center of the hall weighs an astonishing 2.5 tons, and this piece was actually sold at auction in the 1960s. Although when they went to move it, it was too heavy, thankfully, so it's remained in place to this day. Flanking the staircase were guest rooms affectionately named the Rose Room and the Louis Room. These were often reserved for the Berwinds' nieces and nephews during their summer visits. Continuing down the hallway on the left side of the home, you'll find the Van Allen Memorial Room, which was also known as the Blue Room. This was once the private retreat for Edward's sister Julia when she ultimately came to live in the home. I'll explain more about that later. At the end of the hallway is another beautiful bathroom, and to the right of this was Mrs. Berwind's bedroom, which wasn't just a place for rest. It was the nerve center of the estate. As the lady of the house, she managed the operations, staff, and extravagant events that defined the Berwinds' social standing. And if you're a fan of HBO's The Gilded Age, you may recognize this room as Gladys Russell's bedroom. Walking through a connecting door, we enter Edward's sleeping quarters, and to keep with the Gilded Age norms, the male rooms were always more modest by comparison, since men of Newport often spent their weekdays in New York, returning to their families by train or boat for the weekend. As we leave Edward's room, we walk through another bathroom before we enter the sitting room, which was the private sanctuary for the family, and hidden pocket doors would be used during grand parties to seal off this room entirely from guests. While on site, I spoke with an employee and I asked her what her favorite room in the entire house was, and she mentioned the family room upstairs, which is this one, and I can see why. As you walk through it, it does have this lingering energy of warmth. You could tell there was a lot of love between this couple back in the day. I love that their photos are still here, showcasing the family that once was. As we leave the sitting room, we walk back into the second floor hallway, and this is where you can really appreciate the perfect symmetry throughout the entire house. The second hallway to the right of the grand staircase features tapestries that are the same size that are hanging on the other side, as well as the same skylight. As we walk down the hallway, you'll find additional guest rooms to the left, as well as a sewing room to the right. At the end of the hallway is the service staircase, and this was used by the unforeseen workforce to run the Elms flawlessly. What's incredible about the Elms is it was designed with a perfect balance of luxury and labor, and at the time, the Elms was a pioneer in modern engineering since it boasted one of Newport's first electrical systems and even had a backup generator for a backup generator to ensure that the estate never missed a beat. Even the servants' quarters were hidden seamlessly behind a wall on the roof of the home. As you step outside, you'll find that the landscape is perfectly symmetrical, and fountains and sculptures are highlighted throughout the property. While visiting, it was raining and cold in the middle of December, but we definitely would love to come back here during the summer months to see everything in bloom. Now this is where things take a tragic turn. Mrs. Herminie Berwind passed away in 1922, leaving Edward all alone since the couple had no children. To avoid the loneliness, Edward invited his unmarried sister Julia to act as his Newport and New York hostess. When Edward died in 1936, Julia inherited his $31 million estate, equivalent to nearly $690 million today. Julia continued to summer at the Elms until her passing in 1961, keeping the estate running just as it had been before, which included a staff of 40 servants. Although after Julia's death, the estate was left to her nephew since she also had no children, and he shockingly made the decision to not keep the property and instead auction off all the belongings inside of it and sell the estate itself to a group of New York developers who planned to bulldoze it down and replace it with a shopping center. Thankfully, just days before the demolition, the Preservation Society of Newport stepped in and purchased the mansion, saving it for future generations to enjoy. In 1962, after a whirlwind of restoration, the Elms opened to the public, quickly becoming one of Newport's most beloved landmarks. Today, it stands as a time capsule of America's Gilded Age, offering visitors a glimpse into a world defined by elegance, innovation, and sheer determination. The Elms is more than just a mansion. It's a testament to resilience and preserving the spirit of a bygone era for generations to come. Thank you so much for joining us today as we explored the Elms, and please follow along if you're interested in these kind of historic mansion exploration videos, since Sean and I just went to another Gilded Age estate this past weekend that we can't wait to share. But this time, we went up to New York. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.